and this is not live. This is pre-recorded. Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay.
Facebook followers, Billy Colburn here, editor of the Courier-Record newspaper in Blackstone, with one of Blackstone's most well-known personalities, Facebook and otherwise. Former Courier-Record staffer Ed Conley. Now,
eccentric.
a little bit. And if anybody knows, watches Facebook, you and I have had some healthy debate.
Great discourse.
Debate. One thing I want to start out with, just to refresh everybody's memory, Ed worked at the Courier from 86 to 94.
8 years.
Well-known wedding photographer,
Right.
a videographer, retired very youthful, age 88.
Right.
You have been one that has always, since I've known you, laid back, take a deep breath, very calm. You seem to have gotten a little bit manic since on Donald Trump. But tell me what it is about Donald Trump that gets you wound up.
All right. Well, here's what I want to. Let me set the stage.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
Okay, because you and I go way back to the dark room.
We do. 1990.
1990. You came here for the summer.
That's right.
And I had to teach you how to do the film in the dark room.
You did.
Doug had taught me, and because I was the only one doing photography then.
Right.
So anyway, you had to learn how to make a correct exposure. Right? And so that, it's too bad. Do you still have a dark room?
When we moved in this building in 1999, the dark room was no longer necessary.
That's too bad. That's such a great metaphor that people have lost, because it's a hands-on practice of figuring how to get the correct exposure of reality.
You can't rush it. You got to let it. You got to give it time
Right.
to get the right contrast. And
well, the way I set the metaphor up is that when you're in a dark room, or you get two people, okay, and I've got a viewpoint, right, and I want to make a picture of it, exposure, show it to look at this, perfect
Right.
exposure. So you put it in the developer, and you watch it. The paper turns black and white, and it begins to grow, and you have to stop it, fix it, or it keeps going to be black.
That's correct.
So you got to watch that perfect.
It's magical at the time. Pre-digital, it was magical.
It's alchemy.
Yes.
And so you stop it, and you hang it up, and it dries, and you say, look at my exposure, look at my world, look at my reality.
That's right.
This is a perfect reality, a perfect exposure, a perfect viewpoint. Then there's another person in there, and he takes a picture of the same situation, and he stops it at a different exposure. No, that's not the right exposure. This is the right one. So now you got two pictures, each with a perfect exposure, but they're contradictory.
Right. One's been allowed to properly develop. One may be muddier because it was jerked out
Right.
the developer too soon.
Premature.
Right.
But the living metaphor here is that from my viewpoint, my picture is a perfect exposure. Yours is overdeveloped. From your viewpoint, my picture is perfectly developed. Yours is either underexposed, you're premature, or there you go again.
Right. Right.
Or overexposed. Man, where'd you get baked with that idea?
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So
Understood.
now you got two people hanging up their photos to the world, because now it's public, and now I sell my photo to everybody. Yeah, this is the correct vision, and you sell your vision. You say, I got the right vision, or I got the left vision,
Right.
or I got the Christian or the Buddhist or whatever the viewpoint is. So we're filled with a world of viewpoints hanging on a line, everyone trying to sell the other one.
And no one's really changing anyone's minds. Now, one thing I'll say,
You can't because what you see is real.
Right.
It's not like this is an orange chair. You can't convince me it's not orange.
Right.
Because I see it.
Right.
It's fucking real.
Right. That's right.
People see the world and say it's real. And now America is split into two contradictory viewpoints, each one claiming my viewpoint is real. It's like religion has become political. And now it's like this is a matter of faith.
And politics has become religion for some people.
Yeah, now it's a matter of faith. It's actual perception. This is why I've been working with this for 10. Well, I love Trump because I've really been meditating on Trump and writing about Trump.
All right. But you dealt with him the first time. Now, the first time I saw you on Facebook in 2016,
Right.
Your world you did not seem as manic then. There are times where the calm, collected Ed Conley that I've known for years
I just get manic with you, Billy.
But no. But your post before I even comment will be like, I'm like, damn, it's really wound up. And you're not the only one in Blackstone, by the way. There's some other people I know that.
That's because I really see America in a crisis, and we're going down a sinkhole, and we can watch it happening in the news. I mean, they just actually voted on Congress that it was okay to deport American citizens to a foreign prison.
I'm not familiar with that vote. Now
they just voted it.
Let me answer some things we can agree. I think both left and right have got to agree. The immigration is very important in this country. We've known that for years. Immigrants have come here. They most of them I know have they've run businesses. They've done work. The Hispanic community in particular, faith is a big thing. Family. And the Republicans really missed the opportunity early on to capture more of them. But the illegal border crossings, you don't believe that is totally fictitious, do you?
No.
Right.
Well, let me frame this.
Okay.
Now, when I was a photographer, my favorite, particularly wedding photographer, my favorite lens was a wide angle, particularly in receptions.
Oh, you get more
because I could go up and take that wide angle, and I would just shoot, and I would get get a frame without having to focus. Like a zoom lens, you got to focus, and then you got where am I, and you got to run around and come back out.
Exactly.
Got a wide angle, you just shoot, and everything's in focus, right? And so I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I asked you about the border.
Okay. All right. Immigrants.
Right.
I wrote about this morning. One of his Trump's interviews right now. He said somebody asked him about that, and he said, "Well, immigrants, we have a different standard. Shipping them to foreign countries,
right? If you come here illegally, I always heard that what Trump
people they're shipping." Or picking up are here legally. That's the problem.
But are these citizens?
Yes,
they are citizens.
You're not watching the news.
Well, I don't. This will surprise a lot of folks. I don't watch a lot of news. I don't watch Fox. I really watch a lot of Netflix because my whole life is news. Right. And you'll notice on my page, I rarely post political. I respond.
Yeah.
And you've become Facebook friends with some of my fraternity brothers, which I think is cool.
Right.
Rob Lamb, whatever. And
I got
a lot of friends of mine. But I just think that Trump's got. Let me put it this way: how in the hell, if Trump is so evil, and so a lot of folks call him Hitler, did he get elected twice? 2016, and I mean, he's a comeback story of really American politics.
Let's look at that. Okay. Well, just another side note there. So I've been here, I've worked for. I've got. By the way, if you want to look at my stories, it's on my Facebook page.
Blackstone Chronicles.
Blackstone Chronicles. You go to the pictures. And you scroll down through all the pictures, and you come to the pictures of the feature stories,
which were great. You were the poodle. You were the poodle for Doug. I was a pit bull.
And you can read the story by going to the picture.
Right.
They're all on there. And I went through the archives and took pictures of them and digitized them.
Right.
I got 3,000 or 4,000 followers on.
Oh, they're great stories, Ed. They're great.
But anyway, my point is,
how did Trump win twice if he's so evil?
All right. So. Keeping dementia at bay here.
Okay, it's all right. Because a lot of people do really, and you've said it too. You have at times almost said that the people who vote for Trump are in a cult, and others, not you. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I've seen others in Blackstone and from Blackstone who basically have said, if you've supported Trump, there's no defending it. You're a racist, and
all right. Here's my idea.
Okay.
I think the most destructive thing to American society has been the false equivalency that started with Fox News and other news. All right, so before cable came, so I go back to, I was growing up with radio,
going to black and white TV, right?
And I remember when the first TV came when I was in the 50s. I grew up on radio,
right?
I grew up on sound,
right?
And then TV came, and TV created the difference. I'll get to the point, but I'm moving in a circular way.
Okay,
here.
I knew you'd be circular. Dave.
Okay,
I'm more linear, but you go ahead.
When you grow up on radio and you like podcasts, all right, radio is coming back.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So
conversations,
listening to sound is a direct medium to your being. It's intimate.
Yes.
You're listening to somebody talk. It's intimate. His voice is your voice if you're really into it.
Agree totally.
And
Agree totally.
TV comes and it separates you visually. So TV was a visual communication. Now you are over there and I'm here on the TV.
Right.
And so there is a gap between me and the world I'm seeing. With radio, it's interactive.
Agreed.
There's no gap.
Agreed.
All right. So when TV came, it was a totally passive communication.
You're just sitting there receiving it.
You don't do you don't react with it.
Right.
And your mind goes, love Lucy. Oh, I love that. And then there's a commercial, and now you're buying soap that you didn't even know.
Then there's also the Vietnam War.
Well, I mean, the commercials and TV work as a partner,
right?
Because in all of original TV was sponsored by corporations.
Sure.
They're selling Luckies and all that stuff, right?
Right.
And so it creates an open mind, and the defenses are down, and the commercial comes, boop, and suddenly you're buying that product, and you really don't know why. But I really want to smoke Luckies. I don't like Pall Mall anymore.
Advertising is very effective, no doubt.
Yeah, it's subliminal.
Yes,
it's subliminal.
Right.
And so but when TV was here, and I guess you remember when there was 3 networks.
That's it.
Trinity.
Yes.
ABC, NBC, CBS.
Correct.
And each one was reporting on an objective reality that everybody agreed upon, but the anchors had a little different slant to it. Oh, I like Cronkite.
Well, Walter Cronkite was the best, and it was really.
But the point,
we know that he was a little bit left of center. He was friends with the Kennedys, but you never saw it come through on the newscast.
The point is that the objective reality was the same. Nobody argued that the chair was blue.
Right.
It's an orange chair. So he reported on the orange chair.
Right.
Fox came in and said, no, that chair is blue.
Right. Was it just Fox's fault? I mean,
cable.
But like I said, I'll submit, and I think you might agree with this, and I feel bad because I'm a big capitalist. I would submit that media is the one product in America where competition has made it inferior, where we've gotten more competition in media, and the end result is not as good a product as we had 40 years ago.
Well, it's a proliferation of choices.
Right.
In other words, we're drowning in choices.
True.
My wife does. My wife is a great cook, and everything she cooks is good. And so when I come in, for dinner, would you like some hot dogs and beans, or would you rather have some rice and chicken? Now, they're both delicious. To me, there's no difference.
Right.
And I got a choice, So
but I don't see you. What do you watch? If you had to rely on it, what is Ed Conley's medium of choice on national news? Where do you find yourself watching?
I don't watch any of it, but I watch streaming news.
Okay.
All right. And I love TikTok.
What made Fox? What makes Fox?
Well, let me get back to that point there.
All right.
Because this goes back to the televangelists. Remember when cable came? We had the 3 networks.
Right.
That was it.
And then CNN, we saw the war in Iraq.
Well, there was no cable came.
Right.
Now, what cable was like the Protestant Reformation. Before cable, you had the Trinity, the Catholic Church. It was like the Middle Ages and the Trinity, right? ABC,
Right.
And they were basically the 3. It was the 3 in 1. It was a trinity of networks. They all reported on the one reality or God, but they came in 3 forms, 3 networks.
Right.
But it was one objective reality. Okay. When cable came, it gave the medium suddenly had a choice. And you had, remember when the first televangelists?
Oh, yeah.
You had
Jimmy Swaggart was a big one.
Jimmy Swaggart, and you had
Billy Graham,
and you had Falwell,
Jerry Falwell,
and you had that other guy,
Oral Roberts,
and you had that other guy with Tammy.
Oh, Jim Baker.
Yeah,
Reverend Jim and Tammy Faye Baker.
Yeah. But anyway, these were
who came to Blackstone in the 1960s. Believe it or not,
these created huge cash cows. Now the church wasn't limited to your little church on the corner of Church Street.
Right.
Now it was a universal church because your audience was a little bunch of people there, but your real audience was the millions of people watching it on TV.
Right.
And then the message that was preached was prosperity. And if you tithe to this televangelist preacher, you'll become prosperous. So the money came rolling in, and and they all got corrupted,
Right.
because that money corrupted them.
A number of them had
It
scandals.
was a cash cow.
Right. Right.
And then there was now there was the intermediate one was Pat Robertson.
Right.
So what he did was unify religion with the televangelists,
the Christian right,
with politics. So now
he ran for president.
Now you get Christian news.
Right.
Right. You get Christian news, not secular news.
Well, he was the 700 Club was a Christian news network.
But the point is that he made secular politics religious.
Okay.
So
I can't argue with any of that,
you got a viewpoint now through the lens of the Bible.
But no matter what station we watch, getting to some of the current day's events, the images we see, for example, of, under the Biden administration, there's just scores of folks crossing the border with no rhyme or reason. Some of them, like I said, a lot of them are probably good folks trying to, make better ways for their families. But there's no doubt there have been some, to quote Donald Trump, there have been some bad hombres that have crossed the border.
All right, let's look at my wide-angle lens again. Let's put that lens on.
All right.
Now, I'm 88, and I've been studying history, psychology, philosophy, yoga, Buddhism since
as long as I've known you.
1957.
Okay.
All right. And I was on a submarine, and the first book I read, the one book that I think really changed my life, I was always reading before that, but I read the autobiography of Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton was a intellectual Catholic with a great academic career ahead of him, and he gave it all up and went to live in a Trappist monastery with a vow of silence. In other words, he disappeared.
Wow.
But because he was a writer, a creative writer, and he wrote about his journey, the abbot allowed him to write. So he was given permission. He couldn't write if he didn't have permission.
Right.
So he was able to publish his books. And the first book I read of him was the autobiography, The Seven Storey Mountain, which was a journal of his mystical journey in a Catholic mystical tradition. And they introduced me to all the Catholic mystics of the Middle Ages, and all these great saints of the Middle Ages and their poetry and their writing. And so really, when I look back, I think that was turning, because I was in a submarine.
Right.
And a submarine, and I think metaphorically, and a submarine is like you have to go in a fleet. I was in a fleet, anti-submarine fleet, but then I would submerge the sub.
Right.
So where did he go? Where did Ed go?
He's underwater.
He's gone to the monastery. He's meditating. He's gone somewhere, but he left the world.
You're getting circular on me.
I know, but I'm trying to get back.
All right.
So so this wide angle view basically gives me, because I've been around for long enough to see this change historically, not like on TV, but I was there watching it.
Right, sure.
And the America has changed radically from the shift from politics to being a religion. So politics is now a secular religion.
I agree with that. I think
that happened by the GOP, not Trump.
Well, and I think you're right. I think for too many people, and we see it on Facebook, politics has replaced a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be, people watch the news for 30 minutes, went on, their business. Now it's like it divides friendships, it divides families.
You see, the old three networks didn't do that.
Correct.
It was like reading the newspaper.
Correct. Exactly. And you just go, okay, that was it. And we just go, life goes on. Now it's just, like I said, 24/7 news cycle, in my opinion, has not produced a better product. I don't know if Americans are more informed than we were 40 or 50 years ago.
Well, it became a religion, and I've watched it.
Right.
I watched Nixon. He was the first felon. He never really got, but he was getting close to it.
Right.
And he left, right? But he created this idea of the imperial presidents. And Nixon said, if the president does it, it's legal.
He did say that. He did say that.
Right.
Now, there are some people think that
But then
the plumbers were CIA agents.
Yeah, okay, but let's get away. Let's stay with the wide angle lens. So those are narrow focus.
I know. I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Wide angle,
All
okay.
right.
So the Republican Party was in a dilemma with Nixon,
Right.
Because they need a strong leader. The Republicans have always been about leadership. A wise man. In fact, even Plato said democracy was not the best. He said the best government was a wise king. But a wise king, a benevolent king.
Right.
In history, there have been a couple. That's about it.
Right. That's right. That's right. Power corrupts.
Right. Yeah. First they got power, and then they became benevolent. But anyway, this whole idea of
Politics being religion.
Politics being religion was an idea of it might have been Lee Atwater.
That was Lee Atwater, who on his deathbed said he regretted some of the.
Well, what he regretted doing was when the Republicans were looking ahead and they were seeing that the liberal majority was expanding because it had women, blacks were voting, and you had gays and all these little liberal tribes, and that was much bigger than the single tribe of the Republican Party, which is basically white and Christian.
But then Ronald Reagan formed the Big Tent. Ronald Reagan formed the Big Tent.
Right, but it was, so the smaller tent was white male, and that's still the problem, white male, Christian, and business.
Right.
Conservative.
Republicans were viewed as tough on defense too.
Yeah, and defense, right.
Right. That was a
strong defense. All right. These were the pillars of the Republican Party.
And I remember split now.
And I remember Republicans back before Nixon in the 50s, and they were wise businessmen. I mean, they were the ones, the whole idea behind the Republicans and the liberals was that the liberals were passionate people because they got these separate tribal black issues, women's issues,
social rights,
gay issues,
social
all
issues.
these rights,
Right.
And the Republicans were more like one right, and they the Republicans, where do all these fucking rights come from,
Right.
We used to be just one, just very simple, now all these rights, everybody's got a right, you got to, and it keeps multiplying, So, so anyway, the Republican had a party, and so the civil rights came in '64, and there was a mass the Southern Democrats were the power of the Democratic Party.
But they weren't big on
Solid South.
Right, but they didn't like integration.
And civil rights came, and they exodus.
They did. They became bird Democrats.
Just like the Jews leaving Egypt, and they identify with that.
Right.
The exodus,
Right.
And so now they're in a diaspora. Well, where's our home now? We're in the wilderness. You tried Wallace, so we'll have an independent party.
Right.
George
Wallace.
Segregationist party.
Segregation forever, he said.
And that boy, and Nick said, hey, invite them into the Republican Party. And these people are stupid. All you have to do is throw some bones to them. Election time, you throw a few bones out there. So we'll give you the Bible in schools. We're going to give you, all these rights, for you, give it to you, But then the rest of them, you just forget about it. They'll go back to sleep.
I can't disagree with that.
And so the rest of the year, next they'll probably go ahead and do their business, But they can't. But to get the votes, and what they want is passionate votes. They want people who are going to stand out in the rain.
Well, I think both parties today want. I mean, there's fervor on both sides. There are people
now because the Democrats got an enemy.
Right.
Right. So what Nixon did.
But their enemy they have, Ed, is a former Democrat who, for 40 years, the enemy of for 40 years has talked about tariffs. Has talked about America getting quote unquote screwed on trade deals.
Mm-hmm.
We have stupid people running the country. He's been saying that for 40 years. Oprah Winfrey, Phil Donahue admired him. Larry King admired him.
Right.
He was invited to Bill and Hillary Clinton's wedding, and he was a Democrat.
Right. Well, what you're doing right now is basically trying to find a rational way to explain the insanity that's going on in our nation right
Well,
now.
one could argue,
And
Ed,
it is
but one
insane.
could argue that Trump was right on a lot of those issues. Ross Perot said NAFTA was going to be a giant sucking sound. Everybody thought Ross Perot was a little crazy.
Mhm.
We absolutely lost our man. That was the beginning of the end of our manufacturing base. You wrote stories here in Black.
Well, now he's put tests. Here's a prediction. It's not just from me. It's on the news.
Okay.
That in about 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to enter into a dark economic winter where all the shelves are going to be bare because there's no more imports coming from China. And if you took everything out from China out of Walmart, it'd be empty.
And when Walmart first opened here, they had signs, everything here is made in America. But that didn't last.
Well,
yeah, because Americans, and my father said, Americans want their products cheap.
Well, that manufacturer is not coming back.
Well, that's one of my questions I had here for you.
Because we're in the computer age now. We're not in a machine age. I just wrote about that this morning.
But don't you believe that that countries should make their own bullets and pharmaceuticals? Shouldn't every nation for its own security?
Well, yeah, it should.
Yes, and we need to get back to that. Now, I agree with you and others who say that Trump's got this pipe dream on tariffs. That manufacturing, even if tariffs are successful, you're looking at a 10 to 15-year cycle probably, and Americans don't have that patience.
They can't invest because there's nothing certain.
Right.
No business can make a 5-year investment.
But is it not worth
if Trump changes his mind tomorrow?
But what's the alternative? Is the alternative to continue to get crappy trade deals and have everything made in another country?
Well, let's go back to the. Go back to.
See, I had you on subject for a little bit, Ed. I had for 30 seconds. I had you on subject.
All right, we're still working. We're in the developing room. Right. We're working for exposures.
Okay,
we're trying different ones,
okay.
Right? Okay, but you know that alchemy is an art of meandering and discovering the exposure.
Okay,
because you take photography, and you might take particularly with digital, and you might take 50, 100 pictures, and one of them will be, God dang,
it's perfect.
Look at that.
Right.
And I didn't even plan it.
Right.
Right. So truth is discovered, but you have to discover it through trial and error. Let me give another wide, let me see, go back to see about Americans. Now, I love Trump in a weird way. I think he is a savior. Yeah, okay. And the reason I do is because since Nixon, America has been locked in a cultural gridlock of false equivalency. Now, false equivalency happened when Fox came and the like, and it would hold up talking heads. So the news became controversy. It was exciting.
Right.
So you get two opposites here.
Every story had to go. Let's go. We're going to have with us today the Michigan Republican and the South Carolina Democrat, and
everybody gets a viewpoint, and everybody's right. Let's see what the viewer says.
Right.
Before that, with the Trinity,
Cronkite, Peter Jennings, and Tom Brokaw.
There was no argument about whether the chair was orange or not.
Right.
But now we get an argument. Now, well, the chair is orange, and I say it's off orange, or it's blue.
Right.
Or it's, shades of, all that. And I'll take a position and we'll fight and people will watch because it's exciting.
But there are also a lot of things now I said something earlier, I'm going to contradict. I said something earlier that the proliferation of news channels may have created an inferior product.
Well, they create the inability to discover truth.
But there are things going back in time, Ed.
Because truth is now a choice.
But I think largely people like Cronkite, they were giants, they were great men, whatever. But I think we've learned over time, like for example, the Warren Commission. That was the biggest lie ever told to the American public.
Yeah, that's coming out.
And we swallowed it because there was no one would challenge it.
And this fits into the dilemma we're in, because now everything is distrusted.
It is.
That's a conspiracy.
It is.
Well, when you can't trust reality, you're headed for a ward. If you can't trust what you see, you've got to, and I can't choose. I don't know what to pick.
Right.
Well, my uncle left me 500 martini glasses.
I remember that.
And I used to do martini time.
I remember that. That.
And people come to my house, and I would say, "Come in, look at this. Look at the wall of martinis." And I would say, "Choose one." I could pick one.
Yeah.
And the woman would go, if there was a couple, the woman would go, "Oh, I like this one." And the man would go, you choose.
Huh. Interesting.
All right. So he was, and I know the male mind gets stumped when there's too many choices. He likes, I'm going to go hunting and I'm going to get a deer and I'm not going to shoot a turkey.
When I go to a store and I want to buy something, as soon as I see something, I pretty much grab it and go.
The woman is the male mind is hunting.
Right.
Female mind is gathering.
Right.
Okay, that goes back to the.
I get all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I know my wife loves her and her sister. They go in a craft shop and they'll stay in there all day. They won't buy anything.
Right.
But they will pick up thing and, oh, well, this would be nice in so and so's house, and I would love to put this up. Wouldn't that be nice? And they put that down.
But getting back to the person.
Well, wait a minute.
All right.
So I leave. I would sit down in the front. In the front. So we want a choice. The male mind, and I don't mean gender-wise. Right. I mean the way men, the male thinking principle.
Okay.
Is for seeing what you want and getting it. And then you can sit back and have a beer.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right. And so the women is more, let's try this out. What about this? And put this up. No, that's not right. Try it all and you'll finally come to a conclusion. Okay. But the point is that TV has created, in other words, network TV didn't offer you a choice of reality. Your choice of network, your choice of Cronkite, Huntley, and Brinkley, or what?
Right.
But there was no argument about what's real. They all reported on the same event.
Right.
There was no, well, that was fake.
Right.
There was no idea of fake news.
No. Well, Trump branded that. That was that. Yeah. And that really hurt. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The one thing about Trump that's, and it's a challenge, is that there is a cloud over every media outlet now. But you've got to. I think locally, I love it when people go to meetings that I go to because they can say, yeah, I saw it. What Billy reported is accurate. But, otherwise, I find myself, if I watch MSNBC, they'll focus on, I mean, there's some Democrat the other day trying to say Trump is probably worth the 25th Amendment now because he's lost his cognitive ability. I'm like, folks, you can hate Trump all you want, and you can say he's erratic and he's a chaos, but the guy is physically, I mean, he's active. He is, but the same media, Ed, and this is something I'd like to get your take on, it's now pretty much come out that for at least the last 2 years of the Biden administration, he wasn't president. He wasn't cognitively there. Even when we watch television live addresses, we'd be like, that's okay.
Well, let's not get, let's get back to the wide angle.
Okay.
Because we'll end up in my picture's better than your picture.
Well, no, I don't want to win. I'm not here to win an argument. I just want your take on that.
I know. But so my take is I want to get back to the wide angle.
Okay. All right.
Otherwise, we end up in my picture's better than your picture.
Right. Okay.
And why is that? And okay. So let's keep the wide angle. Now let's get back to this other idea that religion, that politics has become a religion for the right in America.
Generally speaking, I agree with that. Generally speaking.
Liberalism is pretty much the same as it's always been.
That's also become a religion.
Wait a minute.
Right.
I'm looking from my own perspective.
Okay.
We live in a FDR world. In other words, FDR changed. Don't stay with me. FDR is the founder of the Liberal Party because the Republicans before him in the history of America was laissez-faire, hands off. The government doesn't.
That's correct.
This is a wilderness. You go out there and chop your own trees and make your own stuff.
That's right.
Go west. There's no government. So as we got complicated and urban, there had to be government help because you couldn't go out and have a ranch.
We also had depression. We had the Great Depression.
Well, you had to work in a factory, right? And that's now you're not building a single car. You're just putting a nut on a wheel. So now you need anyway. So this was a great shift in American culture. And FDR, my father, who was a naval officer, hated him, and an Irishman, and I couldn't understand that. But FDR said government is your friend, and it can help the people. Before him, the Depression came, and everybody's starving, and Hoover said, hands off, the market will take care of itself.
Right.
Right. Free market.
No,
don't mess with the market.
Right.
And FDR said, mess with it.
Right.
We're hungry. And so that created the modern Democratic Party all the way to LBJ.
Agreed. Totally agree. That's totally.
FDR, LBJ, bookends.
Yes.
And LBJ, the Great Society, I'm going to change all these liberal policies and change the government, have all these. And he did it. And I love it. I'm living on Social Security and Medicare.
I'm for that, but now some will say LBJ also did it for control. So the people on the right will say, yes, the social programs, they had some positives, but also the party that does that will have a voter for life. That was the mindset for a lot of people. Now I don't know how true that is because Republicans and Democrats both like Social
Well, up
Security.
until LBJ, labor unions were the strength. The workers were the strength of the Democrats, but they were corrupted because they all had Jimmy Hoffa.
That's right.
And they were the mafia got into them.
That's right.
And all that. So labor unions were corrupted and needed to be cleaned out. Reagan came in with a new mandate, and I can pull the quotes up. If the government comes to your house to help you, says I can help you.
The 9 most dreaded words, and then you better run.
You better run.
Yep.
The government is the enemy of the people, not the friend of the people. This is a radical shift,
right, from
LBJ, and it was needed because there was a lot of fat and stuff. So I'm not doing that.
Right.
However, he went totally the opposite direction, and we're now living in the world Reagan created, which was the wealth at the top. Because when he eliminated tax, I remember Bush running on
read my lips, no new taxes.
No new taxes.
And then
what does that mean? Is that if you want the government is evil. Now, if you come up with the thing that the government is the enemy of the people, it should be your religious duty, your moral duty, to limit the government until it's just limit that river until it's a trickle. Take all those things that the government does and give it to private industry.
Right. But they never the Republicans never did limit the government.
No, because when they get in power, they don't want to limit.
Correct. I mean, it's election ploy, and like I said, I feel bad that I voted twice for George W. Bush,
right.
And I got captivated in that post 9/11 mentality, where we're going to go kill all the terrorists, and all we did was create more terrorists.
Yeah, Bush's thing was, well, let's see now who well these bearded guys living in a cave in Afghanistan did it, but they don't have an army, and I need a war. God, I need
Cheney
a war.
needed the war. I think Cheney was more president.
Because we're falling, and the only way that we can restore America and our confidence,
war footing.
We have an enemy, and the enemy has to have an army. Now let's see what army around there, big army that we can defeat.
Iraq, and they tried to kill my daddy.
We know all about them because we gave them the military.
Correct. We funded the Mujahideen. Right. Bin Laden was one of ours.
Right.
We cheered. I remember at age 11 cheering when Soviets invaded Afghanistan and got their butts kicked.
Right.
I'm like, oh, they're having Vietnam. They're having their Vietnam. But I think one thing, Ed, that we can agree on also, I think after World War II, we had the great boom of the 50s, whatever. I think America decision makers and people deep in the Pentagon and elsewhere concluded that America economy will always be at its best on a war footing. And we've always kind of been on a war footing.
But then you have to create the war.
Correct. That's what
we do.
And I think that's where I give Trump high marks. Trump is
creating a war.
Trump says he wants to avoid war.
A war on immigrants.
Well, I'm talking about, let's talk foreign policy first.
Well, he's declared war on everybody with the tariffs, first of all.
But I'm talking about military. He wants fewer people killed, right. Americans and otherwise. I mean, right. And for trying to broker a deal with Ukraine and Putin, and everyone knows Putin is no saint. But I think there's nobility. I mean, look what Carter did with Begin and Sadat. Mm. I mean, that was noble. He was trying to end killing anywhere. I think.
All right. Let's go back to wide angle and come around to another angle.
Okay.
This is fun. Okay. Hang in there.
If y'all can hang in there, I can hang in there.
All right. Okay. We're good. You can edit the hell out of this.
I don't edit nobody. I never edit a video. Okay. Never edit a video.
Okay. Okay. So there's several things we're getting back to, Ken. Religion and secular.
Right.
ever since the end of the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages was a faith culture. The
Sure was.
Catholic Church and the mythology of the Catholic Church was the whole culture. There wasn't any other option. I mean, it
Sure.
was it. Everywhere you went, it took care of you from birth to death and afterwards. In the religion and the philosophy, in the church and the priests, the whole thing. And it was the age of faith. But the problem was that reason, which comes from Greek, was kept interesting in the physical world, like Galileo. Well, look at those stars! Don't you know? The Catholic Church says that the whole cosmos revolves around the Earth. We're the center. But if you look at those stars from, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Is the sun coming around the Earth, or is the Earth coming?
Don't ask those questions.
So they begin to connect dots.
Right.
And the worldview of the Middle Ages, based on mythology of the Bible and Egypt and the other ancient civilizations, that worldview, that reality, was not fitting with direct observation.
It was the conflict. It didn't, right.
So something had to break, because the direct, even with diseases, what causes smallpox? Well, I don't know. It's air, so we need to have better, all these. There was no scientific study.
Right.
Science, the Middle Ages had science, but it was called alchemy.
Well, you've mentioned alchemy several times, right?
And an alchemy is a science where the subjective scientist is mixed with the objective experiment. And they're like a poem. So you can't create a scientific recipe with a poem.
Right.
Because you can't, that's what the scientist feels. So alchemy, you could not separate the scientist from the experiment. So it couldn't be shared. Nobody else could do it. So the scientific method was created by Bacon and later Descartes and some of these early 16th century scientists, and they began to discover that the scientific method was a revolution in what is truth. Now, truth became dependent upon your senses, not on your faith.
Right.
Okay. So your senses were the measure. So if you could, if some scientist did this and made gas or something, and made some new experiment, or a theory.
That was truth.
A theory.
That was truth.
It wasn't until you could duplicate it. Other people who were not biased. All right, here's a recipe. He said, do these 10 things and you'll create the same chemical I did. That's true. But it's not absolute. It's a relative truth, because it'll change. 20 years later, somebody else said, well, if you add this, you get whoa,
Okay, right.
or whatever. So it evolves. So truth evolves. But when it first comes out, you take it as being absolute, in the sense that it's a temporary absolute thing.
Right.
But you always know somebody else is going to discover a better way.
Right.
Right. But the point is, it's verified like you would verify a recipe. So if my wife discovers a great recipe for cookies, if she writes the recipe down, anybody can make the great cookies. But if she cooks intuitively and she just throws stuff in the bowl, comes out with a great cookie, nobody else can do it, because I don't know what she threw in there.
Right.
So that's alchemy.
Right.
And science is the recipe. Write that down, then everybody can make it. Right? So that's two ways of finding truth. The alchemy, the Middle Ages was intuitive truth, but you couldn't share it. You couldn't reproduce it.
Right.
All right. So until you could reproduce truth, when they could do that, that created the industrial age. The scientific age started in England.
Right.
And so, and all these great scientists, these great founding scientists of all these different ones, they discovered the cure for this and the cure for that. And then suddenly the disease was gone, and it was all verified. And it was a miraculous transformation of the world, because it started in Europe, right? And the European culture was a culture of great individuals. If you look at the mansions in English mansions, You don't see any women up there. You see great, unique men, individuals, right?
Several hundred years ago, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
but they all have just, they're not like Chinese. I can't tell them apart. You know? Or blacks, I can't tell them apart. You know? These European men, not the peasants, they all look alike, but the men, the manner, the rich, the wealthy, they were all unique, and they all wanted to be unique individuals, right? Everyone else was a blend. The peasants, well, they can't tell them apart. Women had their place; you couldn't tell them apart.
Right.
Children, of course, they all look alike, you know,
Right.
and the servants all look alike. But the great men, you know, so this basically is a European mythology, and it's a paganism.
Right.
Because in the Bible, if you go to a religious group like the Mormons, or you go to the Amish, there's no individuals. They all wear the same clothes.
Sure. Sure.
Right? So and this is Asian. So being unique and standing out is not of value in Asian culture or religious culture.
But it is in American culture today.
Yeah, but that's secular.
Right.
And this is a conflict in America. We have a conflict of religion and secular. The religious view is that everybody is obedient to God, and you have to look alike. You go to a church and you all kind of like do the same behavior. You may dress different, but nobody goes in the t-shirt and jeans.
But see, I think you're right about religion and the early, you know, how and when politics became a religion. But I see really the rabid fervor of either we love Trump or damn Trump, or we need. I see that on both sides. Both sides.
Well, sure it is.
So much fervor and disdain for each other. Not all, because I mean I've told people before some of the best conversations.
Well, just getting back personal now. I've been writing on the
Trump takes a lot of your headspace. He takes a lot of your headspace.
Yeah. Well, also you don't go on my Zen groups. I have a lot of Buddha groups that I write on.
Well, are you?
I'm an equal writer.
You are. Quick personal questions. I'm just curious. People have asked me before, and you make no secret. You and I both make people mad on social media. Is Ed Conley Buddhist? Is he? I mean, I know you believe in Jesus because you mentioned Christ numerous times. What is your faith, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't have one.
Okay. You just study them all, which I respect.
No, I practice them all. And this.
Okay.
But you see, I'm not denominational.
Okay.
If you go to my front porch, I've got a big old Buddha, which I bought, which was got the Craft Mall.
Right.
They call me up. Hey, Ed, we got a Buddha
First person they thought it was Ed Conley.
So I went down there and I got a big old fat Billy Buller, put him on the front porch.
I've seen it.
And then I've got another little, these little fat Betty Buddhas are really Asian or Chinese or Japanese.
Okay.
The silent sitting Buddha is South Asian Buddha, you know, the meditating Buddha.
Right.
But
you've even gone to the yoga. I know
if you
yoga.
go in my house.
Yeah, you do yoga.
Yeah, if you go in my house, I have a huge yin yang display thing that I got at I was with the attic of the Wynn Furniture. They had this thing. Nobody wanted. I bought this beautiful thing as big as this, big, and I've got all my artifacts on it.
Okay.
I've got Jesus there. I've got my gurus there. I've got Buddhas there. I've got Ganesh and
because people ask me that all the time. But
I've got everybody there,
and I never really asked you. I knew
I'm like a museum.
Well, I respect that. I respect your breadth of
Right. So if you go look at my artifacts that I've collected over my life, they're all there, but I've stopped collecting them now. Right. So I've kind of like reached a place at my age where I go directly to the source, the wellspring of creativity that's in everybody here, and I tap into it and it flows out.
Right.
And it doesn't come out in a religion or politics or any particular viewpoint or exposure, you see. So it comes out creatively, and I really have no idea what it's going to do.
Right. Well, I mean, there's no doubt.
I'll say stuff.
Well, you're deep. I mean, you're deeper than most folks on Facebook. This interview alone is probably one of the most deepest interviews I've ever conducted.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say that one of the things I started with is the laid back, Ed, deep breath person I've known. Yeah. You have seen the last year, especially since Trump took office.
Well, Trump's heated up. This is the second term.
Right. But but even the first term, there are times I don't want to use the word panic, but You're rabid.
Well,
You're almost like the evangelist yourself.
Well, I agree. And, I respect that. And I don't know, I don't know what I look like, but I can tell you this. I can tell you this, that I write from passion.
No, I agree. I would love it.
And I also write metaphorically.
Very much so. You're the master of the metaphor.
Now, what I mean by metaphorically is, and when I said I love Trump, metaphorically speaking, let's get back to another point. Of the 50 years of gridlock, now we've been in you hate this when I say we're in a post-Civil War period.
Yeah, you do go back to the Civil War awful lot.
Well, that's because it's metaphorical.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the physical Civil War with the uniforms and all that, and it's located in a space. It's psychological now.
But you refer to a lot, and if someone reads your post, literally a lot of times.
Everybody does, and that's
right. Well, that's what you're saying is a tragedy that people would read it literally, because sometimes I'm like, damn, Ed thinks that we still fear black people.
Right.
I mean, and listen, there's no doubt there are some conservatives or whatever party or wing that there is still racism. Right. There's no doubt about that. But I don't see everything through the prism of race as much as you sometimes do, or that Civil War. You do use that Civil War analogy a lot.
I know, because for several reasons. I'm in the South.
Correct.
And I'm living in a Trump world. Most people in here on Facebook anyway have a Trump exposure.
It's a red county, 60-40, 60.
Yeah, okay. And I write on Facebook. And I used to write on Facebook, and it was really no conflict. But after Trump came and I started writing, and that's partially me too, and people would start posting memes.
I'm one of them. I reply with memes.
Right, okay. Now you post a meme, it's propaganda. It's not science.
Well, for me, it's always been sarcasm. I like
sarcasm, humor, irony, or whatever. But it's posted as a truth when it really, we mistake we don't see what it's not saying. In other words, and you understand this if I can explain it right, truth has two faces. Truth is what is said. If you write what somebody writes in the newspaper, what they say.
They said it, but they may not be true.
They're not saying what they didn't say. Correct.
That's right. Newspapers legally are hearsay.
So other people will say, well, he didn't say this.
Right.
So this is, so if I say what he said here, then it seems to contradict what he did say. That's why he didn't say it.
Right.
And usually when we talk, we know that there's people, somebody will tell you what they're doing, and you look at their behavior and you say, well, that guy, I don't know what, that guy's doing the opposite.
Right.
I'm trying to fix this, and he's breaking it.
Right.
I'm the fixer, let me do it.
Do you acknowledge?
And he's breaking it. You sit there and say, you're breaking it. He says, get out of here.
Do you agree or disagree with a statement? I'm not trying to.
Just let me for one thought.
Okay,
there.
sure.
So Trump is saying, I'm fixing it. And other people look, you're breaking it, mother.
Well, they both can be true, though.
Well,
they both can be true simultaneously.
And here's the metaphorical truth.
Okay.
The truth is that he's fixing it by breaking it. Now, that's not logical.
If it needs to be, but some things need to be broken.
Wait a minute.
What do you say? Listen, sometimes a football team has got to be broken before they can perform.
So what I'm saying here is that we've been locked in a cultural war. I won't say civil war, but it is civil. It means it's social.
Yeah.
A cultural war since Nixon and the end of LBJ and the liberal and all of that, you see. And Nixon came in, and the parties, the GOP and the parties that evolved, which is a dance. America
flipped.
Is a dance, right?
The Democrats want to send billions to Ukraine, and Trump wants to make peace. I never thought I'd see the day where your generation.
Well, he's ripping them off. He's gonna get your men.
But you're the Woodstock generation. They're like, peace, give peace a chance, and y'all are saying send those billions to Ukraine.
Right.
Send those.
Okay. Well, let's get back.
I'm not. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. That's not. I'm not trying to be a prosecutor or anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Would Ed Connolly agree or disagree with the statement that Donald J. Trump, the man from the last 40, 50 years, is just one hell of an American story? It's absolutely incredible American story.
And in the history, he's not going to be, from my point of view, he's not going to be studied as a president. He's going to be studied as a pathology.
As a what? A mythology?
A pathology.
A disease.
A neurosis.
A disease.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But he's the American disease. He's not Trump. Trump is, people don't just appear. People are created by the conditions.
Correct.
So America created Trump,
I've been saying that for years.
but just half of America. But you can't say half because America is a ballroom dance of, you could say, a liberal and a conservative, a male and a female. Liberals have always been the feminine side, Republicans the male side in the way they think.
Right.
Liberalism has been inclusive. All the children are good. The male or father thinking says, well, you have to earn your goodness. We just can't not give everything to you.
What does America first mean to Ed Conley? When Ed Conley hears the phrase America first, what's wrong with that, Ed Conley? What would Ed Conley say?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
But what America do you want for first? You say, what's not being said?
For me,
which America?
Well, for me, it is to be loving of people who want to come to this country legally.
Yeah, but then you have to send the ones that get picked off the street. You need to read the news.
Well, my main concern
and sent to the Nazis didn't invent anything as worse as this. You look at the Holocaust pictures in Germany of the detention. At least they had blankets. And then you look at the pictures of Seapot down there.
Most of these people, at least what I was told, is they have been here illegally and they've committed crimes.
Yeah, well, what you've been told is not going with what's in the news.
Well, see, what station are you watching? See, here we go again.
Yeah. Well, then, all right. So what all I see is fake, and what you see is true news.
No. I'm just saying. Speaking on policy, when he announced he wanted to start with the worst of the worst, I have no problem with that, because if you come here illegally and commit a crime, and I had a friend tell me the other day, they said, Billy, how in the hell is the border security a Blackstone issue? And I said, for 20 years, I've written stories of vehicle accidents where illegal people have been killed, where illegals have killed others. There was 2 brothers in Brunswick County 3 years ago, where daytime illegal alien who had a license suspended. But my friend at college mother, this is a true story. Yeah. New Year's Day in Arizona, at a red light, struck from behind and killed in her late 50s by a 3-time convicted drunk driver illegal immigrant.
Yeah, but these are anecdotal. You don't go out and arrest all immigrants are bad because that guy did it.
No, but I think if you're here illegally, and I differ from Trump in this regard. And even some of my friends, I'm not about going out and round up everyone in the street illegally needs to go. If you're here illegally, haven't committed a crime, let's make you legal. But if you're here with a criminal record, we need to get you out of here.
All right, you need just go back to the Middle Ages and the scientific revolution.
Okay, here we go, folks.
All right, go back to the Middle Ages. Truth in the Middle Ages was what the Catholic said. Catholic Church said it was.
Right.
Period.
Right. We're not there now. We're not there anymore.
We are there.
How are we there now?
Good. All right. So now,
what Donald Trump says, we're all gullible and saying it's truth.
Huh?
You're saying that Trump's followers believe anything he says.
Truth has shifted in America, and this is the great dilemma. Truth is not what evidence shows. Truth is what is subjective. If you feel it's true, it's true.
I don't put myself in that camp.
Well, if you feel that immigrants are destroying America,
I've never believed that. I've never.
That's not a belief.
Right.
Feeling.
I've never felt that.
Well, that's good for you.
Yeah.
We're not talking about you.
We need immigrants, and listen.
Yeah,
America,
that's the dilemma.
We need them, but there has to be some order.
I mean, it's like you get rid of the immigrants, you get rid of China, and all the Walmart's going to be empty.
Correct, but I mean, I think where both sides have got to agree on this, and there's 3 things both parties have got to come to some sort of consensus on: proper immigration reform, making these executive orders have got to be defined better. We cannot have these preemptive executive orders. I don't like any of them. I don't like the fact that Trump comes in on day 1 and instead of 100 or whatever. We're losing. The founders want a strong legislative body.
It creates confusion.
It's confusion.
And, all right, well, let's go. All right, so let's keep circling back because we're working this thing out.
All right.
Okay.
And term limits too. That's another story.
We're looking at 2 ways of truth, and what I see from my perspective. And if you want to see the demarking line, the division is the 50s. Now the 50s, and the best way to understand this is to watch Mad Men, that series. Did you ever watch that?
Watch a little bit of it. Good series.
Well, that is a document of the shift in truth.
Right.
Starts out in the 50s, ends in the 60s. For 10 years. And in the 50s, Truth was what TV, the commercials, Lucky's is good for you. See, a doctor said so.
Yeah.
You know, that you didn't question that. Truth is that. And then Vietnam came.
Watergate.
Well, yeah, that too. But Vietnam was the first break in our idea of truth because it divided patriotism.
Yeah.
Now, Vietnam came. Before Vietnam, Korea, any war, my country, right or wrong, World War I, we're going to war, it's duty. Don't question it.
You're right.
We're right. Vietnam came, and because LBJ created a war out of a hoax, basically.
Yeah, that's correct. The
And
Gulf of
it
Tonkin.
wasn't for national interest. It was for a political, psychological chess game of Russians, you know.
Well, the domino theory.
Stop coming, you
well,
know.
if one
But see,
if one falls, they all fall.
But see, that was a mythological.
Sure was.
Vietnam was a civil war.
Correct.
And they wanted to be free from colonial French and Americans.
And we had no business being over there. We had absolutely
precisely.
And Kennedy wanted to get us out.
So that created a split in truth because half the country says that's not a real war. Why should I go die in the jungle?
Right.
And the patriotic half, that country right or wrong. You don't question that.
Yeah, that's
you go to war.
Yeah.
And remember the 60s, the later 60s? That was the beginning of the world that we're living in now because trust was broken. And if you look at the Vietnam Memorial, it is a sculpture of a great wound in the body, in the earth, and in the body of America.
I've seen it, but I didn't notice it. I
I
just looked at the names.
It's a wound. It's a slash.
Oh, wow.
And if you go there, the flowers and the blood and the grievance and it's a sacred space. You know, it's like a Civil War burning down.
Right.
You know, but so the Civil War, Gettysburg, and Vietnam are equivalent wounds. And now we're still living in the wound. These wounds are not healed. And the reason they were not healed is because there was they became internalized. In other words, Vietnam, and then we left it unfinished.
It was first war we kind of, we didn't, it was how we
like,
left Saigon was pretty.
That leaves a wound.
Yes.
All that, all my friends and buddies.
58,000 men.
All these dead for what?
Yeah.
For what, you see?
Great question. For what?
And so that leaves a wound in the same way that if you have a wound in your life, or maybe you were cheated by your best friend, or a divorce.
We all have those type wounds.
All these wounds,
Yeah, sure.
And we try to heal them, and we go to meditation and go do yoga.
You have good days where you forget about it.
Right.
You forgive them, something make you mad.
So the wound comes back.
Yep.
The father-son relationship is a wound. I talk about that a lot.
No doubt about that.
So that in a mother-daughter relationship is a wound.
Yep.
And it's usually towards maturity that wound heals. And because I did that work with my father.
Right. I remember you telling us about that.
Yeah. And so suddenly, there's the merging of the sun, and there's a healing. And when healing happens, it's at one moment.
Right.
There's no more two.
True.
There's no more grievance.
You talked about breaking something to fix it, which is crazy. That was one point you made. Let me conversely throw this at you. This will sound a little political, but I'm just asking. I'm not trying to attack whatever.
Right.
What was the other side's plan to go after the deficit? Talking about the last election, to go after the deficit, to put the brakes on illegal immigration, because Biden's first executive order was stopping that wall, stopping Keystone Pipeline. We've had what would a Kamala Harris? I never got a gist from her that she cared about.
Well, until this Civil War, cultural war, a wound is healed, none of these policies will be any good on either side. Just be kicking the wound down the street. That's all we're doing, is kicking the wound down the street, come up with new forms of it, put a new Band-Aid on it, still there.
And when midterms happen, a lot of stuff Trump has done will be overturned. No. Democrats regain, You know,
The wound is still there.
right. So what's the solution? How
All
do
right.
we,
So now take Germany and Japan. All
okay.
right. Now they were both expanding cultures, take over the world. Both wanted empires like the French and the British. Now it's my turn.
Right.
Germany's going to have a colonial empire. I'm going to get resources. Japan's going to have the empire of Asia, right? So they were expanding and modeling just like the French and the Portuguese and the Spanish in the previous century.
If Hitler had stopped somewhere along the line, he probably would have had that empire just for a long time.
He was greedy.
He just got greedy. Right.
Once that expansion, once that balloon starts blowing, you can't stop until it pops. Now, so getting back to us, you see the wound in America started with the founding fathers because their ideal was equality. This was the idea of the French Revolution that swept Europe.
Right.
Fraternity, equality. So all men are created equal, but just white men.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so now you get the ideal was all men are created, white men only.
Right.
Women, servants, blacks, all that.
Right.
Okay. So there was a hypocrisy there, but it was an ideal, but there was a wound in it.
But we weren't the only country that, even then in our family, we weren't the only country that treated women and minorities different. I mean, it was worldwide.
Right.
I'm not trying to justify it's horrible,
right?
But it is, like you say, America's original sin was slavery.
Right.
And
that wound is still there. It just takes different forms.
Agreed.
With the Industrial Revolution, the new slaves were the working man. I was reading about this the other day. So before Henry Ford, they made cars individually. You'd have a factory and they would make one car, run up, then they would make another car. So they made complete cars. But Model T was so popular,
they had to make
he had to make more, so he created on the assembly line.
That's right.
So now we're going to turn the craftsmen, these were craftsmen, into machines. You don't get to make the whole car. All you do is stand there and put the nut on the bolt.
Right. So it was more efficient.
Like Lucille Ball with the chocolate.
With the chocolate, that's right.
The chocolate factory.
Right.
But it destroys the humanity.
That's deep. I mean, it's definitely deep.
And so now you need services. You need wages, you need unions, you need health care, all this stuff now because you are the property of the factory. And the factory system has to take care of you because you no longer live on a homestead.
Well, even when they were making cars, but even when they were making cars one at a time, you were still the property of the factory. You were still employed by the Ford family.
And I can see this in Blackstone. My wife grew up here, and I know about the history of Blackstone through her. The house we live in was a homestead.
Her family home.
Well, it had a cow and chickens.
Well, Main Street, Blackstone. Right.
Yeah, and during that time, they people shared, and she had eggs, walnuts, berries, vegetables, and these big old homes were little homesteads.
Yeah.
And Blackstone prided itself on being independent. We have our own utility system. I remember that. One of the few states, one of the few towns.
That's right. Only 16.
That cut away from the grid.
That's right.
We're special. We're free.
Right.
I love that.
Right.
So much pride in that. That independence. And the individual homestead. So all that's gone now.
Why?
We're all dependent upon Walmart.
When did that happen? What made that happen?
Well, it happened during the
early 90s, late 80s?
No, it happened before that. When did the factories go in the 80s?
Late 80s.
Okay.
Levi's closed in 89.
When Ronald Reagan came,
yeah.
Ronald Reagan and the Reagan Revolution. Because when I came here in 1980, textile factories.
Oh yeah, Velvet Textile, Levi Strauss.
Levi Strauss.
Everyone worked at a factory. I mean,
clothing, shoe factories.
Yes, Craddock Terry on the south end, on the west end of town.
And these were, and now it's all gone. You see, now we buy. Those were, and I remember, because being in '88, I mean, I've got a little, when I went to college in 1960, my wife was a new teacher. And I went to 3.5, paid for my college, and we had an apartment, bought a car on her salary.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how young folks today make it.
And that was just assumed. It wasn't like, oh, wow, this is great. It's just the way things were.
That's right.
It's like when you're in a fishbowl and you've always been in this fishbowl, you don't really question it. It's just the way things are.
Right.
This is the way segregation used to be. It's just the way things
ways
are.
were.
Don't question it.
Right. Right.
When I came to Blackstone cracked wide open with the A.J. Neal suit.
Oh yeah, John Neal. That's right. Yes.
And I remember when I came, and I'll tell you, I know I've shared this before, but I was new here. It might have been my first or second first feature I wrote was on the decks in Blackstone.
The people adding decks and one.
You know,
Okay.
people had deck,
Right.
the deck. And I think it might have another one be on Bunton's sourdough bread.
Okay.
Something, because it has a living yeast in it,
Right.
All right. But then A.J. Neal, and I hear Doug up there talking about this Neal, and all this really screwing up everything, and the blacks are taking over, and the NAACP and this
ACLU,
all this stuff, And so I said, no, Doug, I would like to write a story about Neal as a feature. He said, what good is that? There's no news in that.
Did he really say? My dad said that.
Yeah, there's no news in that.
He was the biggest news story of the day.
Well, but then he had Doug. I love Doug. There was a pause. And then he reflected. And, well, go ahead. So I wrote a story on A.J. Neal, not as a news story about. I wrote it subjectively. So all my stories were subjective objectives. My stories were poetic, were prose.
Yes, human interest. Yes,
because I wrote about the subjective values of the person from their point of view.
Right.
In an objective
They're great.
setting.
No doubt. No doubt they were great. And he was
And so I wrote about Neal. And the next thing I heard, Doug talking to one of his buddies coming in, did you read the thing about the Neal story?
John Neal.
And I knew right there and I was home.
That's right.
Because if I could write from my heart with a disapproving father, and Doug was hard to approve.
Oh, no doubt. Dad's biggest praise, as you and I have laughed about, was nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That was like a home run.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
And he perfectly reflected my father, who never gave me a space to write, to be myself.
Right.
So Doug gave me a space to be myself, and I knew I was home.
Right.
And from that point, for 8 years, the stories flowed out creatively.
Your state of mind today, are you more at peace with the world than you've ever been? Or I detect that.
Exactly. I have arrived at a place in my mind where I have no worries.
Okay. Because sometimes, like I said,
I don't worry.
Okay. So no anger, but there are times I really do detect, Ed, maybe I'm the one looking too hard.
I think people see themselves in what I write.
Well, maybe so. Because I just, people say, why do you go and debate Ed Conley? I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes you strike a chord with me where I'm like, we're not racist.
Right.
I'm not like Trump.
Well, let me get back to why I love Trump.
Okay, tell us why you love
I've been writing on him for 9 years, every day, write about. And I've been discovering more about, not about him, but by writing about him, I've been discovering more about the American mind, the American wound, the American neurosis, and the American gridlock, which will be the cultural war. And the cultural war is where America is divided by values, not by what to do. It used to be get divided on the best way to do something.
Right.
Now we're divided on values.
Okay.
You see, and that's a religion. Religion creates values that are absolutely held by the congregate, by their people.
And there's no room to wiggle. If you're a devout follower.
And if you don't like it, you go somewhere else.
Yeah, but the devout followers on both sides, when I read, and I like the people in this community I love dearly. They've always been people I've thought were very even keel, and they'll just say, I can't, if you voted for Donald Trump, then you are this and this and this. And I'm like, man, you can't put. I never believe in putting anybody in a box. I could say, generally speaking, I found that liberals or Trump haters may be like this, but I can never just say, oh, that's so and so, and they are definitely like this, because I don't know them. I haven't talked to them.
Well, I noticed. Let me get back to that particular subject, because one of the popular phrases out there, I'm going to let's trigger a liberal today.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen that.
Okay. Well, when people post a Trump meme, which is obviously designed to get a reaction, and then the liberal reacts, and I'll react,
Right.
and I'll say, "Is that true?" Or what about what you didn't? What about this? And then the pit bulls will come out of the woodwork. You liberal retard!
Well, see, liberal's not a bad. See, I think liberal's not
Well,
a bad word.
you wouldn't believe the rage and the hatred I have aroused among the people I took wedding photographers pictures of.
Some people did say, why are you going to interview Ed Conley? I'm like, why not? He's one of Black China's most prolific writers. You're very. You don't think yourself being political, but you've been very political.
Yeah.
Of late,
Well, I'm political because I use politics metaphorically to point to something that's beyond politics.
Right.
I don't get into, and I don't. You may think I do, but I don't get into Biden's right and
no,
Trump's
you're not
wrong.
you're not a policy wonk. You're not a policy wonk.
No, I don't get into that. But I will talk about the wide angle,
the
lens,
humankind element,
the historical the psychological background, the mythological background. So I use that wide angle all the time.
Right.
And I see the wider field instead of focusing on the two roosters fighting. So a monk and I'm not a Zen Buddhist, but my teacher that really has I have a number of spiritual teachers in my life, and the latest one was Albert Lowe, who was a Zen master at the Montreal Zen Center, who wrote a bunch of books, and his teaching really aroused my wellspring of creativity.
Okay. And
because his teaching goes to Chinese Zen, which is not Japanese Zen. Now, most Zen teaching in Alan Watts in America is kind of like comes from Japan after World War II. But Zen came from China and the golden age of Zen from 7 to 9 AD. Buddhism was in China up until 7 AD, but then it became Zen after 7 AD in the golden age of the Tang Dynasty. And this is the Zen of koans, those little quizzical, those little paradoxical teachings.
Right.
So the Zen master and a monk were walking, and they walked by a chicken coop, and the monk says, "Why are those roosters fighting?" And the master said, "It's because of you." Now, literally, that doesn't make sense. Well, I didn't cause them to fight. So you have to look at the wide angle here. Why are there world wars? Because of you. Why is there conflict in America? Because of you. Why is there any conflict in the world? It's because of you. And that doesn't mean you caused it.
Correct.
It means you are part of it.
Sure. How do you think this
And you
ends?
can't deny that we're part of America, you see.
We're reaching the 1 hour point. I think we're 1 hour and 18, which is long, maybe someone has a long drive, they want to listen to it. That's a beautiful thing about these conversations. A lot of times, you take a YouTube video, this interview, I won't watch it. I'll just drive down the road.
Well, you could cut this in pieces.
I don't like to edit. I like people to see the whole thing. What is your biggest concern?
All right. Answer the question. Why is Trump a savior? All right, that's why. By that I mean, why is he going to save America?
My opinion?
I know. I'm going to tell you.
Okay. You tell me. Okay.
Yeah, right.
You're going to tell me what
Trump restore America. That's what he came on.
Yeah.
Restore America.
So how is he going to do that?
All right. Because America's in a gridlock, and it just keeps kicking the same wound. And you may call it the Civil War wound or the Vietnam War wound or whatever wound you want.
Right.
It's the same bleeding. It's the same feeling.
Okay.
It's the same feeling that I heard who did it.
Okay.
The liberals did it.
So how's Trump fixing that?
All right. So he's coming as a Shiva in India. All the Indians have this figured out metaphorically. For India, the god is both a destroyer and a creator. In Christianity, he's a creator, the devil destroys. Okay. It's split.
Right.
In the Indian mythology, you can't separate them.
Okay.
So you can't separate ourselves. So I'm constantly discovering where I think I'm creating something, but I'm destroying something. And then I said, wow, we do it all the time. I can't open this box.
So you're saying he's going to destroy?
He's going to destroy America to recreate America. He's going to destroy both the GOP and the Democrats. And he's going to arouse the people we're going to have to go back to the people. America is on the people.
So populism, is that what you're going to?
No, awaken the people to rise up and create America that includes both the Republican and the Democratic view. No, that is creativity.
So you're saying all this chaos we're going through will bring about unity? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Either we destroy ourselves and become a memory, or we create ourselves. And we recreate ourselves out of a union of opposites. This is Jesus, not Jesus, but this whole idea of creativity is when you have two opposites together in the same situation. In other words, I got a recipe here to do this, or the boss gives me these 5 points to write, and I can't make it fit my heart, and I try and do this and that, and I sleep on it. God damn it. And finally, the idea blooms, and I'm able to write the piece, including the boss's instructions, with my own heart. And that was what Doug Colbert gave me. There was the heartfelt thing to write a story about this despised black person,
guy that was rocking the boat.
A.J. Neal, who was destroying Blackstone.
I think it was John Sam Neal.
Yeah, but whatever. Yeah, but anyway, but he was destroying Blackstone's power structure as it had been since its beginning.
No doubt. It probably, if you had to really rate the historically important figures of Blackstone since 1888,
right,
in the top 10.
And he was just a butler.
Yeah, he's in the top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe he's top 5.
So anyway, the idea is that creativity comes through failure.
Sure.
You fail trying to get the right idea, but you persist, and you have faith that it's there. Steve Jobs. I got a vision of an iPod. I don't know what it looks like, how it's going to work.
Crazy.
And he puts these men to work. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. He's the editor. You bring in the story. Nah, get out of here with that.
Right.
Finally, one journalism writes the story, and the editor, that's nothing wrong with that.
We got to wrap it up. So when do you how long will this take? When do you think that the people coming back together and taking into consideration
it can happen overnight?
It could happen overnight.
That's the way change happens.
But right now it's not happening overnight.
No,
Trump's got 3 years left in his term.
It could be 30 years from now.
Okay.
Or it could be 5 years.
I think it's going to be a lot longer than 5.
We can't tell. You cannot tell when grace comes.
Or also external events totally rock our world.
If we want to put a religious framework, you can't tell when God's going to act.
True.
But what God does, he's going to heal the Civil War in the body of individuals and in the society.
Gotcha.
And America is part of a larger society now. So now there's a wound in the global society. We're not individual countries now. Everybody, Trump thinks we can isolate, and just make our own little stuff here.
So what you're saying is that
we're part of a larger world.
What you're saying, though, potentially, is a person right now that is reviled by many Americans. 50 years from now, people could look back on and go, he
was a saint.
Right. Because
he did what he was going to do, but he did it in a way he had no idea he was going to do it. He thinks he's going to do it by creating stuff and be famous. Yay!
Yeah.
He's going to create it by being defiled.
Right. Like I said, I agree with that.
And that's very spiritual.
The thing that's frustrated me the most about Trump is, and I voted for him 3 times, a lot of the things he articulates, just the policies, I'm like, yes, I think these are good. But then he goes to these rallies, and the off-color comments he makes and his poor choice of words, and him rattling his saber about, we may do 147% tariff on China. He's the most transparent president we've ever had.
Let's because I think I want to tie up with this, right?
All
right. Vision is a lot of Ken Wilber and all that. In other words, the next stage of human consciousness, not the next stage, but the one that is always coming is vision consciousness. And that is, I have a vision.
Right.
Martin Luther King, I
Got
have
a
a
dream.
vision.
I have a dream.
Right.
Right.
All right, so this idea of a vision is a creative idea that unifies the conflicts out of which it grows. Just the simple things, like I can't fix this lawnmower, right? And I tried everything, and I read the manual. I can't do it now, And then suddenly, I have a vision. What if I turn this nut?
Right. It comes up, changes everything.
Right.
Right.
But see, I couldn't find that on my own struggle. I had to relax the struggle. Same with writing. Well, you know this. You struggle to get it right, and you're going to have to go play golf. And then maybe, bam.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you come home and you just sit down and blah, 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 blah,
if you're doing something, if I'm writing something really important,
it just flows out.
Usually there's a break is needed because I'll have another perspective,
Yeah.
or I'll be in the shower the day the paper comes out, going, "Holy crap, that's the
key.
headline.
Right.
That's the lead. You buried the lead, Billy."
Yeah, those headlines. I loved headlines, and I use it now. Because when I write a piece, I got to come up with
You do,
and it's got to have a catch in it.
Yes.
The headline's got to have both sides.
Right.
With a question.
Right.
So, I want to read that.
Yeah.
I want to find out what that's about.
I will say one of my funniest accomplishments this year on social media is, like I said, the normally reserved, calm, as you've seen today, a very deep, profound man. I made you so mad. You had a Facebook page. You dropped the F-bomb on me and then deleted it. And I screenshotted it.
Good for you.
And I think Tilly got mad about that one. But hey, folks.
Well, that caught me at a
rare weak moment there. Because one thing, Ed is not Ed is not volatile. Ed is very, like I said, zen. It's all going to be okay.
Well, that's a false. My teacher, he had 4 pictures up in his monastery, in his center. One was a teapot with tea. One was a cloud sunset. Another one was a stream, and another was 2 drunks fighting. And he would ask the students. So this was a Zen Yositani. He says, "Which one is Zen?" And they would all pick the peaceful one. And no, it's the 2 drunks fighting.
Wow, interesting. Folks, listen, I hope you've enjoyed this. This is definitely going to be one of our deeper Facebook dives. If you would like to come sit in the big orange chair like Ed Conley has today, you know how to contact us.
It doesn't burn.
It doesn't burn. Thank you all for listening, for tuning in.